Good evening, and welcome to News of the World. It's Thursday, August 20. Tonight we drift slowly across 9 countries from Denmark to Norway. There's nothing you need to do, and nowhere you need to be. Settle in and let the world turn. Denmark has long had a gift for blending the familiar with the faraway. And this week, Copenhagen's Tivoli gardens gave that instinct a new home. The amusement park, which has stood in the heart of the city for more than a century, opened a Japanese-style quarter among its older pavilions and lantern-lit paths. It is the kind of addition that does not shout. Tivoli has always been a place of small worlds side by side. A carousel here, a flower garden there, a concert stage around the corner, and now a corner of Japan sits among them. Visitors can walk through architecture and detailing drawn from Japanese tradition. Set against the park's usual glow of string lights and evening crowds, it is not a grand statement about East meeting West. It is more like an invitation to slow down, which is what Tivoli has always done best. Families come after work, children run ahead. Someone stops to look at a bridge or a gate that was not there before. The park has survived wars and occupations and reinvented itself many times over, always by adding rather than replacing. This new quarter follows that habit. If you are still with me, picture the scene: the late summer air cooling over Copenhagen, the faint sound of music from somewhere deeper in the park, and a new pathway that feels for a moment as though it has always been there. A small gift to a city that knows how to receive one. Mexico has long been a place where things get built for somewhere else. Car plants stretch across the north, assembling vehicles designed in Detroit and Tokyo and Stuttgart. Good jobs, busy factories, but someone else's name on the hood. So there's something quietly significant about the news that Mexico has launched an electric car it can call its own. Not a prototype for a trade show, but a real vehicle meant for Mexican roads, carrying a Mexican identity. The people behind it say they want to prove the country can do more than manufacture other nations' designs. They want to show it can dream up its own. There's a certain kind of pride in that, the kind that doesn't need to shout. You see it in the engineers who spent years on this, and in the workers who know the assembly line well enough to recognize when something on it belongs to them. Mexico's auto industry is enormous, and it has been for decades. Whole regions depend on it. But building for the world and building for yourself are different things. This car sits at the border between them. Whether it succeeds on the road or in the market, nobody can say yet. But it's rolling, and it was made at home, and sometimes that's the part worth noticing. Venezuela has been quietly opening a door that's been closed for a long while. After years of sanctions that kept international capital at arm's length, the country's financial markets are stirring again. The signs are modest but real. American oil companies, several of them based in Texas, have signed production deals with Venezuelan authorities, among the first to do so as restrictions ease. Venezuela recently pitched its oil and gas opportunities at a showcase in Houston, and the interest seems to be genuine. According to one official, U.S. refineries are now taking in about half of Venezuela's oil output. Companies like SLB and Formentera are working to bring drilling rigs back online, a process that takes patience and equipment and people willing to show up. This comes at a delicate moment for the country. Venezuela is still sorting through the aftermath of an earthquake that tested its already strained healthcare system. The United States has been providing equipment to help clear rubble and support the broader economy. So the capital market reopening isn't happening in a vacuum. It's arriving alongside the daily work of recovery and the daily work of keeping a country going. What happens next will depend on whether the early contracts hold and whether the money that begins to move finds its way into ordinary lives. For now, the rigs are warming up, the papers are signed, and a country that has waited a long time is watching to see what comes through that opening door. Zimbabwe is counting its dead after a ferry disaster on its waters, and the number has reached 94. The government has confirmed what many feared. The vessel was carrying more people than it should have been. Far more. That phrase, overcapacity, carries a particular weight when you're talking about water. A boat built for a certain number of souls asked to carry more, and the margin between safety and tragedy narrows in ways no one aboard can see. We don't have the names of those who were on that ferry, or where they were headed, or who was waiting for them to come home. But the government's confirmation that overcrowding played its part is a quiet and terrible thing. It means the loss was not only a matter of wind or current or chance. It was, at least in part, a failure of restraint. Pope Leo XIV in Rome has offered his condolences and his prayers. He spoke of grief for the victims and for the families left behind. It is a gesture from a long way off, but grief recognized across distance is still grief recognized. In Zimbabwe tonight, there are households that began this week expecting someone to walk through the door. 94 of them will not. The water keeps what it takes. What remains is the counting and the questions and the slow, heavy work of understanding how a boat came to carry more than it could bear. Iceland sits out there in the North Atlantic, closer to Greenland than to mainland Europe, and yet the question these days is whether it should belong more fully to Europe. A referendum is in the air, and for a country that has spent most of its modern history outside the European Union, that is no small thing. Iceland has always kept its own council. It is not an EU member, though it belongs to the European Economic Area, which means it trades freely with the bloc, while keeping control of its fisheries and its currency, the krona. Those two things, the fish and the money, have always been the heart of the matter. Joining the EU means giving up a say over fishing grounds that have sustained the island for 1,000 years. It also means adopting the euro, and after the financial collapse of 2008, when Iceland's banks imploded, there is a complicated relationship with letting someone else steer the currency. But things shift. The central bank has been pressing the government to rein in cost pressures, and there is a sense that the old certainties may not hold the way they used to. There are culture debates too, even over the flag itself, which seems unlikely in a place this progressive, and yet there it is. So the referendum question is not really about Brussels. It is about what kind of country Iceland wants to be in the next century. A quiet, patient conversation, the kind that suits a long northern evening. Kazakhstan is moving through a political season, with an election approaching under a system its leaders have called a reform, though from the ground, some say the country still looks much as it always did. It is against that backdrop that a journalist named Gulnara Bajkanova has been sentenced to 8 years in prison. The Committee to Protect Journalists, an international press watchdog, reports her sentencing as part of a wider crackdown on media in the weeks before the vote. 8 years is a long time. It is the kind of sentence that makes people go quiet, and that may be the point. Kazakhstan has worked in recent years to present itself to the world as a country opening up, modernizing, finding its footing between large neighbors and larger ambitions. But a prison sentence for a reporter tells a different story, one about what happens to people who write what the state does not want written, and about how that space narrows when power is up for renewal. The crackdown, as described, is not a single dramatic moment, but something slower, a tightening that accumulates. For the journalists still working there, the air has gotten thinner, and for the rest of us watching from afar, the signal is plain. Sometimes a country's real direction is told not by its elections, but by who it silences before them. Bosnia and Herzegovina sits at a familiar kind of crossroads these days, the kind where the question isn't only about who comes next, but about who gets to decide. The role of the High Representative, an international position created under the Dayton Peace Agreement to oversee the country's civilian affairs, is due for a succession. But the process of choosing a new person for that post has become something more than a simple handover. It's exposed a disagreement between allies across the Atlantic. The United States and several European partners have found themselves looking at the question from different angles, and the gap between those views has become part of the story itself. For people in Bosnia and Herzegovina, the High Representative is not an abstract idea. It's a position that has shaped daily life here for nearly 3 decades, with the authority to impose laws and dismiss officials when the country's fragile institutions can't find agreement on their own. So when the outside powers that created that role can't agree on who should hold it next, it isn't just diplomacy that feels the strain. It's the ordinary sense of stability, the feeling that someone is keeping watch. And yet life goes on, as it does. The fires that burned across the region this season have quieted. The week of Italian cuisine came and went in Sarajevo. Women's futsal sides are preparing for their European Championship matches ahead. The country waits and then carries on. Angola has long been known for what comes up from beneath its soil, the oil fields off its Atlantic coast, the wealth that has shaped so much of its modern story. But this week, there's a quieter story from the other direction, from the east of the country, where the land itself is being asked to give a little more. The Angolan government, together with the African Development Bank Group, has launched a project meant to stimulate agricultural productivity across the eastern provinces. The details are still taking shape, but the intention is clear enough to help farmers grow more, grow better, and reach markets that have often felt distant. Eastern Angola is a region of wide plateaus and seasonal rains, a place where smallholder farming has carried communities through generations, even as the country's economy leaned heavily on petroleum. A project like this doesn't try to rewrite that balance overnight. It works in the direction of patience, seeds, tools, training, irrigation, the unglamorous infrastructure that makes a harvest possible. For a country that imports a good share of its food despite having fertile land, the logic is plain. And for the families in places like Moxico and Cuando Cubango, it could mean a season with a little more certainty in it. If you're still with me, hold that image for a moment, not the machinery of development, but a field in eastern Angola, a little greener, a little more tended than the year before. Somewhere, someone is already planning what to plant. Norway has always lived with the sea, and the sea has not always been gentle. Off the country's western coast, the Stad Peninsula juts into the North Atlantic, and the waters around it are some of the most treacherous a mariner can meet. The currents there are unpredictable. The wind comes hard off the open ocean. For generations, ships have had no choice but to face it head-on, threading through the gap between the peninsula and the open sea, hoping the weather holds. Now, Norway is preparing to do something no country has done before: cut a full-scale tunnel straight through the mountain of the Stad Peninsula, so that vessels can pass through solid rock instead of fighting the winter waters outside. They are calling it the Stad Ship Tunnel, and it will be the first of its kind anywhere in the world. The idea is simple, even if the engineering is not. Rather than asking ships to brave the worst of the coast, you give them a way through it. A passage carved into the land itself, wide enough and tall enough for the vessels that carry freight and people along Norway's long shoreline. It is a quiet kind of solution, the sort that comes from a country that has spent centuries learning what the sea can do, not conquering the water, but stepping aside from it. If you're still with me, picture a ship gliding through a corridor of stone, the sea muffled on either side, the mountain holding still. Somewhere on that coast, the work is beginning, and the route that sailors have always feared may become the one they no longer have to. And that's the world for tonight. Wherever you are, whatever tomorrow holds, rest easy. The world will keep turning slowly while you sleep, and we'll take another quiet trip around it tomorrow night. Good night.